Hello everyone, welcome back. Today's stories are from r/MaliciousCompliance. Story 1. As you all know from my history of posts, I am an OTR driver, OTR meaning over the road, and have been for a decade. This took place this afternoon. I was coming out of Texas into Oklahoma, and I ended up getting pulled into the weigh station in Oklahoma. No big deal. Everything was legal, the truck was scaled correctly, and I just had a level 1 inspection done on myself and the truck back in December. I was given a clean slate, with a quarterly CVSA sticker to boot. Keep that one in mind. The quarterly stickers are good for 3 months, meaning that, unless there's an obvious violation, Department of Transportation, any smart officer would look at the sticker and send me on my way. How I got unlucky to get saddled with Barney Fife, fresh from the academy, is beyond me. So, they scale me out on their platform scale, which lined up with the weights I had documented on a CAT scale, certified automated truck, scale. I then get told to pull around back, for a level 1 inspection. This young guy, about 22 to 23, starts off with an arrogance that I can only describe as I have a badge. What are you going to do about it? Arrogance. Running through the basis of what the inspection will entail. I chose this time to point out that I just had a level 1 inspection done in December, and had paperwork documents stating it was clean. If there were any obvious violations, could he point them out to me? As when I checked out the truck this morning, I didn't see any. He then gets up in my face, and says, "Driver, I don't have to point anything out to you. That's what the inspection is for. Besides, you probably faked the documents and sticker to get out of it. Sit there and be quiet, I'll be back." He then goes back in the building to go get a lowboy to lay down on while he's under my truck. Apparently, when he was inside, he told another officer about what I had said to him because I see 2 older gentlemen accompanying the first officer back to my truck. I didn't say anything. One of the older gentlemen looks at the passenger low corner of my windshield, where the clean inspection sticker is placed. He then points to it while saying something incomprehensible to the other older gentleman. Then they step back to point it out to the junior officer. All 3 of them approach my driver's side door, and I look down at them. "Sir, do you have an inspection report for that sticker in your window?" Older gentleman 1 asks. "Why yes, I do," I replied, handing him the document, dated December 27, 2024. He looks it over, then shows it to the other 2 officers. He then glares at the younger officer. "Smith. Not real name, this is a clean inspection report. He can't be inspected at this time. Did you see any obvious violations?" The second older officer asked. "No. But I was sure I was going to find something, considering how dirty the exterior of the truck looks," Smith replied. "Mind you, it just snowed a couple of days ago. And my truck is kinda coated in salt grime. I can't get it washed until tomorrow. It's driving me insane as well." Smith. "It just snowed recently. That's salt grime on his truck. Was he overweight?" the first officer asked. "No," the younger one sheepishly replied. "Then let him loose," the first officer barked. He then looked up at me. "Sorry about him. He's only been a officer for a month. How long have you been driving?" "A little over 10 years," I replied. He turns to look at the younger officer again. "I think he has more knowledge about what is going on with this kind of stuff than you, right now," the first older officer retorted at Smith. "Now, please apologize to the driver and let him get on his way." Smith apologized. The 3 of them walked back to the building, and I took off. Story 2. I used to work at a mid-sized company where our department had its own supply closet. Everyone knew the rules: take what you need, don't hoard, and keep the area tidy. Simple enough, right? Apparently not for our new micromanaging office manager, Karen. Karen was obsessed with cutting costs. She'd swoop in like a hawk every morning, inspecting the supply closet. If a box of pens was a little lighter, or the post-its weren't perfectly aligned, we'd get a stern email about unnecessary consumption. She even implemented a sign-out sheet for supplies. Want a highlighter? Better justify it in writing. One day, Karen decided to escalate. She put a lock on the supply closet and declared herself the sole key holder. If anyone needed something, they had to email her and wait for her to approve the request. This was, of course, on top of her other duties, so getting a new pen could take hours. Needless to say, productivity started to suffer. Cue malicious compliance. A coworker of mine, Tom, was a bit of a prankster, but always stayed within the rules. He decided to test Karen's new system to its limits. Every time he needed anything, no matter how small, he emailed Karen. Need a single paperclip? Email. Need to replace a dried-out marker? Email. Stapler jammed? You guessed it, email. Tom's meticulousness inspired the rest of us. Soon, the entire department was flooding Karen's inbox with individual requests. Since Karen insisted on handling every single one personally, she quickly became overwhelmed. Approving requests started taking days instead of hours. Meetings were delayed because people didn't have notebooks. Presentations stalled because someone was waiting for a dry eraser marker. Management started noticing the bottleneck. Our department's performance metrics were plummeting, and everyone pointed the finger at the supply chain fiasco. Karen tried to defend her system, claiming we were being wasteful and needed structure, but the evidence was clear: her micromanagement was backfiring. After a particularly disastrous week, upper management stepped in. They not only revoked Karen's authority over the supply closet, but also gave her a formal reprimand. The lock was removed, the sign-out sheet disappeared. We went back to the honor system. Karen, humiliated, kept a low profile after that. As for us, we may have lost a week of productivity, but the petty satisfaction of watching Karen drown in her own bureaucracy was worth every second. Story 3. This one actually got done to me yesterday. We had some material that I knew we were going to use more of than projected, so I told the person using it to cut the lengths you actually need, and then measure the rest and let me know how much is left. Now, for various reasons, our system uses a wild mix of measurements. There is almost no way to know in advance whether something like this will be measured in inches, feet, meters, or millimeters. So, intending to save both of us some trouble, I told him, any units are fine. I can convert them easily. I realized what I'd said about 2 seconds later, and tried to clarify, any normal units. So he brought me the measurement in Roman cubits, and then, once we'd both had our laugh, he gave me the sheet in millimeters that he'd converted from. Story 4. When I was little, my mom sent me to a private Catholic school. My family isn't religious, but they felt like I'd get a better education there, and when I switched to public school later I found out they were right. I was pretty far ahead. This school had uniforms. Boys wore button-down shirts with the school logo and blue slacks, girls wore jumpers. My mom hated cleaning and ironing these white button-down shirts every day. I was one of 4 kids. Kids play and get grass stains. The shirts were taking up a lot of her time. Finally, she gave up and bought a bunch of white polo shirts and started sending us to school in those. Admin had a conniption fit about it and brought her in for a meeting. They opened the dress code rulebook and pointed out that these shirts were missing the logo, so they were in violation. My mom looked over the rules and confirmed that the lack of a logo was the only violation. They said yes. She thanked them and left, and the school probably thought it was over. Just to be petty, they sent a school-wide memo regarding the dress code. My mom took every polo shirt and stitched a homemade school logo onto them. It wasn't hard to do, as the logo was just the school initials. Admin was furious, but during the next meeting, realized their hands were tied. The memo piqued the curiosity of other parents, and they started asking my mom where she got the new school shirts. Apparently, she wasn't the only one sick of ironing and getting grass stains out. Suddenly, I wasn't the only one wearing a polo shirt to school. The worst part for the school was that, despite tuition being pretty expensive, they also had a kickback deal going with a local clothing store for the uniforms. The store had a monopoly on the sale of those shirts. When business started lagging, the store made their own version of the polos for sale. Eventually, the original shirts were phased out entirely. That was over 30 years ago, and my mom still loves telling that story. Edit: I'm cracking up at some of you calling my mom a Karen and clutching your pearls about the poor school losing revenue. You guys are acting like they had to put the school mascot down after they didn't make their nut on uniform kickbacks. I can assure you, they were, and still are, making money hand over fist and doing just fine. You guys typically side with the HOA as well when you read those stories? Story 5. For reference, this took place back in the late 90s. I'd imagine school systems work much differently at the HS level now, and my kids aren't that old yet. Okay, so it was my senior year of HS, and I had just enough credits in my junior year to graduate. I had taken martial arts and taught it too. So, I got an extra gym credit early. I changed my mind because I wanted to graduate with my friends. Therefore, I just loaded up my schedule that year with whatever I wanted or I thought would look good to colleges. A few AP courses, like US Gov, Physics, Anatomy, and Physiology, and some random stuff. The APs were a lot of work, and I had good test scores from last year already. I wasn't looking to get lower scores on classes I didn't care about, so I dropped Physics, Gov, and a random Jewelry 2 class. So I had 3 open periods a day surrounding lunch. It was magical, and I still had 1 AP class, so although I wasn't messing around too much. Both my parents worked, so we didn't know anything was amiss. Till we realized we had a broken answering machine. Again, it was the 90s. Apparently, my school was calling 3x a day, every day, to tell us I wasn't showing up to some study hall class I had been assigned to after I dropped the few classes. This hadn't happened other years, as it would just be a free period. The funny part was, the woman calling us was kind of a bitch about it. After the first few days, the messages started to get nasty. Yet no one said word one to me in the school, nor was anything sent home. This is also around the time my mom was starting her retirement from being a hairstylist, so she'd do like a week on and a week off, and now she was getting the calls. So she tells the woman she's okay with it. His grades are good, technically, he could have graduated already. College apps are already out, so no biggie. Oh, that was apparently the wrong thing to say to this lady, 'cause she read my mom the riot act. Going on about how irresponsible we all were, and how she was personally going to tank my applications. How could I be so brazen? Etc., 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 etc. Crazy level of overreaction. Plus, she wouldn't stop calling for every single class, despite my parents' approval, repeated calls to the school, and eventually, they showed up face to face. It was by law that they had to report on pre-approved truancy. So, my mom sat down on it. They wouldn't accept their word over the phone or even face to face that I was allowed to leave, as I had in previous years with zero issues. They wanted something in writing. I don't think any of it was legal or necessary because the lady was telling my parents that they had to put all kinds of stuff, like they knew they were being detrimental to my learning. They were essentially bad parents, etc., etc., etc. crazy stuff. So, my mom gets an idea. She says, 100% they aren't writing anything like that. She looks it up, and it is a law that if a student has an unexcused absence, they have to notify the parents. So, she started playing dumb, making this lady call her up, every single period I missed. Then she would hem and haw about, do I allow him to miss this period, or is it a problem? Let me think. Then she'd say, make sure it's okay this one time, but call me if he misses anything else, because I'm not sure how I'd feel if he missed more. Knowing full well I was missing 3 periods a day, every day, till I graduated. They finally stopped calling, like, a month before I graduated. It was a solid 5 months of my mom messing with this woman named Sarah. Edit. So, I'm a lil shocked with some of the responses here, with the overblown worry for the school. Some more info, stuff you obviously missed. A. I could have graduated junior year. That means they would get $0 for my buns not being there at all, and or hope there is a kid in the district who couldn't get in, still waiting, which, by the way, doesn't work like that. B. Very well off district. Easily top 10 in the state at the time, and sometimes top 5. Very well off state, school had all the extras. C. We had 9 periods a day, I had 3 off, plus lunch. D. The biggest one? My parents didn't have a problem with it, and I was sub-18. That means it was okay. Common sense should have had this woman look at the student in question. C. I am easily graduating and didn't have a history of causing ruckus. And they listened to the freaking parents like the law says. 3 periods a day, people. Senior year, could have graduated last, Regents, BTW. Like that means anything now. Parents' approval. Geez. SMDH. That's it for now. See you in the next post.